That night no one arrives with torches. No kiss takes place. No arrest interrupts the silence of the garden. Jesus remains free while the world sleeps, unaware that history has just strayed from the path it has always known. If he was never arrested that night, everything that came after begins to unravel. But Jesus' freedom doesn't bring relief, it brings instability. Without imprisonment, there is no trial, no cross, no visible outcome. The authorities panic, the disciples are divided, and the tension grows silently. Each passing day without his arrest makes his presence more dangerous. Because if Jesus continued walking freely among the people, speaking, confronting, and teaching, then the world didn't lose a martyr. It gained an impossible problem to contain. And the question that no one can answer is simple and disturbing. What happens when history doesn't eliminate what should have ended that night? As dawn breaks and Jesus is still free, the garden becomes a symbol of something no one expected. The disciples wake up confused, realizing that the night that should have brought everything to a close has simply passed. Jerusalem awakens, unaware that the course of history has been silently altered. Jesus continues walking among the people, speaking as he always has. But now each word carries more weight. The authorities feel the unease of a threat that has not been neutralized. Without imprisonment, there is no hurry, only growing tension. Jesus' freedom does not bring peace, it brings expectation. Something should have ended that night, but it didn't, and this continuation begins to change everything. As dawn breaks and Jesus is still free, the garden becomes a symbol of something no one expected. The disciples wake up confused, realizing that the night that should have brought everything to a close has simply passed. Jerusalem awakens unaware that the course of history has been silently altered. Jesus continues walking among the people, speaking as he always has, but now each word carries more weight. The authorities feel the unease of a threat that has not been neutralized. Without imprisonment, there is no hurry, only growing tension. Jesus' freedom does not bring peace, it brings expectation. Something should have ended that night, but it didn't, and this continuation begins to change everything. As the weeks pass, the postponement of the inevitable begins to take an emotional toll. Jesus doesn't change his tone, doesn't hide, doesn't run away. He teaches with the same firmness, as if he knew that the absence of imprisonment is only an interval, not a victory. The disciples live between hope and fear, wondering if freedom is a sign of deliverance or of something even greater to come. The crowds grow again, drawn by the idea of a master who has not been silenced. For the authorities, each new day without imprisonment is an invisible defeat. History has not progressed towards sacrifice, and precisely for that reason it has become more dangerous, more unpredictable, and impossible to control. As Jesus' influence expands, the city begins to divide more noticeably. Some see his freedom as a sign that God is protecting him, others as a serious failure of the authorities. Without imprisonment to justify open persecution, the confrontation becomes silent and strategic. Rumors circulate, alliances are formed, and decisions are made away from the eyes of the people. Jesus continues teaching, aware that each day of freedom increases the risk for everyone around him. The disciples feel the weight of walking alongside someone who should have been arrested but wasn't. The story remains suspended, like a taut rope, about to break at any moment. Without the arrest to end the movement, the pressure turns directly to the disciples. They are followed, interrogated, and subtly threatened. Every encounter with Jesus becomes a calculated risk, yet he does not back down. His words become clearer, more direct, as if preparing everyone for something that is yet to take shape. The authorities realize that time is working against them. The longer Jesus remains free, the harder it will be to silence him without consequences. The people watch, divided between admiration and fear. The absence of that decisive night transforms expectation into collective anxiety. Something needs to happen, but no one knows when or how. The story unfolds without a climax, and this waiting begins to corrode everything. With the atmosphere becoming increasingly tense, Jesus begins to speak of choices that carry different weight. He announces neither escape nor victory, only responsibility. He knows that prolonged freedom is not a sign of peace, but of postponed confrontation. The disciples realize that the danger is now constant, without a set date, without a final moment to prepare. The authorities debate in secret, divided between acting forcefully or waiting for the movement to wear itself down. Each day without arrest amplifies the impact of Jesus' words because they continue to circulate uncensored. The city lives as if it were on the brink of something inevitable. The night that should have brought everything to a close has failed, and now destiny seems more open, more uncertain, and much more difficult to control. If this interpretation is making you rethink this story, leave a comment below with your perspective. These videos are meant to provoke reflection, and I read all the comments. And if this type of content interests you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. When they finally try to act, it's too late for any simple gesture. Jesus is no longer just a teacher followed by a few, but a constant presence that has shaped consciences. The authorities realize that arresting him now could ignite what they tried to prevent. The disciples feel the tension in each other's eyes in the streets and the silences that precede each encounter. Jesus continues to walk freely, as if he knew that the greatest danger lies not in prison, but in what his words have already awakened. The absence of that decisive night has transformed fear into something diffuse, widespread, impossible to contain. History doesn't move towards a single point. It branches out, and every choice made now carries consequences that no one can foresee or undo. As time passed, Jesus' continued freedom began to have an unexpected effect. Without imprisonment, without martyrdom, many began to directly confront his words, without the filter of tragedy. He did not become a distant symbol, but a living, unsettling presence impossible to ignore. Some disciples grew stronger, others wavered, realizing that following someone free was more difficult than following someone dead. The authorities lost control of the narrative, as there was no final event to conclude the story. Jesus remained there, teaching, questioning, challenging. The absence of that fateful night did not bring relief to the world. It only prolonged the confrontation between truth and power, transforming each new day into a continuous test of courage and choice. As the conflict drags on, the city begins to tire of waiting. Without arrests, without trials, without resolution, the tension transforms into collective weariness. Some followers distance themselves, desiring a clear end, while others remain precisely because nothing has ended. Jesus perceives this division and continues speaking of a kingdom that does not depend on dramatic endings. His words now sound like a direct challenge to human impatience. The authorities feel they have missed the ideal moment. Any belated action seems insufficient. The disciples understand that living alongside Jesus means accepting uncertainty as part of the journey. The story remains open, without a climax, and this lack of closure begins to reveal who can truly endure living without immediate answers. As the months pass, the absence of imprisonment changes how Jesus is viewed. Without the image of the condemned, he inspires no immediate pity or heroism, only constant confrontation. His words continue to challenge structures, but now demand daily decision, not momentary emotion. The disciples realize that following the free Jesus means having no endpoint to cling to, no event that justifies everything. The authorities acknowledge that they failed to close the story when they could. Each additional day amplifies the impact of the message, not through the force of sacrifice, but through the persistence of truth. The night he should have been arrested becomes a silent historical error, and the world begins to grapple with something far more difficult than a martyr, a presence that does not disappear. As time progresses, Jesus' freedom begins to produce a more profound effect than any imprisonment could. Without a tragic end to simplify everything, people must grapple daily with what he teaches. There is no way to transform his words into distant legend, because he remains present, observing, responding, confronting. The disciples realize that faith now demands constancy, not emotion. The authorities understand too late that letting Jesus go free did not weaken his influence, only spread it silently. The absence of that decisive night did not prevent the world from changing, only made it slower, more uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore. Each person is forced to decide without the relief of a resolution, and this ongoing choice becomes the true weight of history. Over the years, the story of Jesus' freedom ceases to be remembered as a single event and becomes lived as a permanent confrontation. Without imprisonment, without the cross, without a public resurrection, there is no single landmark to sustain faith. What remains are words that continue to demand a response. Some follow them as a way of life, others reject them out of weariness or fear. The disciples grow old, carrying a message that has never found closure. Authorities change, governments pass, but the presence of Jesus as a living idea continues to challenge generations. The absence of that night did not erase his impact, it only removed any excuse to ignore him. Without a dramatic ending, the story becomes more unsettling because it forces each person to decide every day what to do with someone who has never been silenced. In the end, the question that echoes is not about what happened to Jesus, but about what never happened. He was not arrested. He was not eliminated. He was not transformed into a distant symbol. He remained a living presence, demanding constant choice. Without a cross to end the story, without sacrifice to ease consciences, his message remained exposed, unprotected. The world lost the chance to simplify everything into a single ending and gained something much more difficult to face: ongoing responsibility. Perhaps the arrest that night would have been a relief, because when the truth is not interrupted, it does not allow distance, it does not allow neutrality, and it never stops asking, day after day, who you choose to be. If you enjoyed this approach and want to continue exploring stories that are almost never told this way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And now, click on the video that's appearing on the screen. It directly complements what you just watched and may completely change the way you see this story.